This is my brutally honest review of The Sims 4 Star Wars Journey to Batuu. This is part of a series where I review every pack for The Sims 4, including all of the older ones. EA describes this as a pack about creating your Star Wars story, experiencing the edge of the galaxy and uniting with iconic characters. Get your own lightsaber and droid. Explore Batuu to find kyber crystals and hilts and some other Star Wars stuff, blah, blah, blah. So the creator sim for this pack is basically Star Wars cosplay. I'm not a fan of Star Wars in the slightest, so it's not for me, but I do give it credit for fitting the theme very well. Although unless you are a Star Wars fan, you will not appreciate a single thing from this pack. Now, just to confirm, aliens in The Sims 4 Star Wars Journey to Batuu are not real aliens. They are basically outfits that you get from casts that look like aliens that you put over normal Sims. And I think that's an important thing to mention. Even though the outfits of this pack definitely suit the world, they can't actually be used in the Batuu world, kind of. When your Sims travel to Batuu, they are stripped of their regular outfit that you assign them in CAS. They instead basically get put in a default Batuu outfit when you arrive that you have no control over. So the actual CAS that comes with this pack is technically not properly usable. And because the outfits only suit the aesthetic of the Batuu world, they're not really appropriate outside of Batuu in a normal Sims 4 world. So you can't really use anything in the pack. Is a little bit strange. Although I do give them some credit for adding sufficient outfits for kids, toddlers, and male Sims, especially like the robe thing for kids. Again, I don't know what this is, but it's really cute. The pack also has two aspirations, which act as a pack tutorial and a trait which prevents your Sims' needs from decreasing in the Batuu world. The cast gets a couple of points for having good balance between male, female, and non-adult life stages. And of course, it has a consistent theme. But as I said before, the outfits are basically pointless because they can't really be used outside of the world, but you also can't use them inside of the world. It doesn't really make any sense. The cast for this pack is basically like a Star Wars themed paperweight. So unfortunately, it is getting a 2 out of 10. Now, I know there are a lot of builders who bought this pack just for a couple of these stone floor swatches that came with the pack. Honestly, like, I think it's insane to buy an entire Sims 4 pack just for 2 floor swatches, but apparently that's what a lot of people do. There's already enough floor swatches in the base game, so like, you do not need this pack for floor swatches, guys. Don't be erratic. Journey to Batuu actually has tons of build stuff. The majority of it is purely decorative with no gameplay functionality though, other than a few tables and chairs. The build stuff fits the theme extremely well, but just as the cast, technically it cannot actually be used. It's not actually possible to build in the Batuu world as it has no buildable lots. And it's so funny because the only world in the entire Sims 4 game where the Batuu objects are appropriate is Batuu, but you cannot build in Batuu, therefore they're literally useless. If you specifically love sci-fi or RPG fantasy style things, then maybe you'll make use of this stuff, but of course you'll somehow have to try and make it fit into one of the Sims 4's numerous American suburban mining towns because there is nowhere else for it to go. Maybe if you're a machinima creator, you might find it useful in some way. If only we had the Sims 2 and Sims 3's create a world tools, then maybe you could create an alien world to fit the aesthetic, but unfortunately you cannot in The Sims 4. The Sims 4 is not a life simulation game, it is an aesthetic DLC simulator. And as an aesthetic DLC simulator, this pack delivers on offering aesthetic sci-fi DLC, but unfortunately you cannot use it as it does not suit the aesthetic of any other world, apart from the one world where you cannot actually build in. In other words, you're paying for build assets that you cannot use. It's kind of like the equivalent. Imagine if you lived in a really hot place like the Sahara Desert and you see a coat for sale. Like, yeah, it might be a really beautiful designer coat, but like, you never need to buy it. There's no point in buying it because you never use it because you live in a hot desert. So you wouldn't need the coat, however beautiful it is. And I feel like that metaphor applies to this pack. The build stuff is great, but you literally can't use it. So it doesn't need to exist. It's pointless. I would have given this pack a 0 out of 10 for build mode because nothing is usable, but I know some crazy people will buy this pack just for their 2 stone floor swatches, so it gets a 1 out of 10 for build mode. The Batuu world is a vacation only world, so your Sims cannot live there. As I mentioned before, you can also not build there as there are no lots. Technically, there is 1 lot that you can build on with cheats, although it won't be a proper functional lot. It's more so just like a cheat thing, therefore it does not count. There are 3 neighborhoods that resemble the Star Wars universe, the central one being a replica of Disney World Resort's Batuu area. The world is basically one giant set dressing. You can interact with certain objects to complete the Journey to Batuu gameplay quest, but it's a total mess. What's the difference between a rabbit hole venue versus a fake set piece versus an interactable object? Absolutely nothing. Good luck clicking and zooming into random buildings, trying to decipher between what has some gameplay functionality and what doesn't, because it is a near to impossible challenge. The interactable rabbit holes are just shops or glorified wardrobes. There is a cantina that is enterable, although it's technically not a lot and technically not even a cantina, because eating at a community lot in The Sims 4 is a locked feature that requires a dine out game pack. So of course they couldn't implement eating at a cantina in this pack. Instead, it functions as a glorified bar that looks like a sci-fi diner. The world in this pack is not a Sims 4 world, it's just set dressing and cannot be used as a normal Sims 4 world basically, as this supposed world contains nothing in it that amounts to it actually being a Sims 4 world, therefore I do not regard it as a Sims 4 world. Based on that, I hope that makes sense, that sentence, because it sounds a bit weird in my head, but basically based on that, it's getting a 0 out of 10 for the world, because it's not a world. Contrary to what you might expect, I actually don't think the gameplay of this pack is severe, but it is bad. Disclaimer, by the way, I know absolutely nothing about Star Wars myself. I'm solely reviewing this as a Sims 4 player, playing a Sims 4 pack, not as a Star Wars fan. The game has you join one of 3 factions, then complete quests for these factions. In exchange for completing the missions, you get galactic credits, which is the currency of Batuu. You also get increased reputation with the faction that you're doing missions for. The galactic credits can be used to purchase objects to help you complete more missions, and the increased reputation unlocks you more missions and more objects that you can purchase to complete more missions. In other words, your reward for completing missions is to be able to complete more missions. Basically, like, what is the point in the gameplay of this pack? It's like one of those like pyramid schemes, like an MLM. Like, you buy into it and your reward for buying into it is to buy into it more. There's no actual like gameplay consequences. There's no rewarding element to this. The missions themselves don't feel fun, although they are slightly more fun than the missions that came with the Strangerville game pack. If you fail a certain mission task, there aren't really any consequences, so it doesn't really matter what you do. There are no stakes involved in anything that you do, therefore there is no challenge. Also, because there isn't much difference in appearance of the fake set dressing versus the interactable objects, trying to complete missions can be very frustrating, and it feels like you're just spamming left click hoping to be able to click on something that will be interactable for the mission. Even then, if you do click on something, it might not necessarily be required for the mission, and it's just very confusing. The pack was implemented very poorly. As a result, it does require a lot of patience to appreciate. Even if you are a mega Star Wars fan, you will struggle to understand the gameplay of this pack, and you will find yourself getting frustrated with the repetitive tasks, especially with the going back and forth between different areas and speaking to the same Sims again and again and again. So I think it's really important to point out that, speculatively, in my personal opinion, this is not a Sims 4 pack. Instead, it's like a Star Wars experience that's been coded into The Sims 4, but it's not actually The Sims 4. I really hope that makes sense. They didn't bother to make the aliens real aliens. The world itself is not livable in. You cannot build in the world. You cannot really use a CAS anywhere. The pack even comes with a special trait that means that your Sims needs will automatically go up every time you travel to a new area. In other words, if you go to this world, you won't actually need to care for your Sims needs. So even the basic core fundamentals of the Sims, like caring for them and resolving their needs, are actually erased from this pack. So that's what I mean by saying it's not really The Sims. It's not a Sims experience. It's just a separate Star Wars thing coded into The Sims 4's framework. If you like The Sims, you will hate this pack because it does not encompass The Sims. And if you like Star Wars, you will also hate this pack because it doesn't encompass engaging Star Wars gameplay and features. If you love Star Wars, there are like so many Star Wars games out there which I think are so much better. To be constructive to EA for the sake of being a fair reviewer, this pack I think would have been a lot more tasteful if it was implemented in a similar way to The Sims Medieval. If you don't know, The Sims Medieval is a Sims spin-off game that was released in The Sims 3's era. This was basically a separate medieval experience, but it was coded into a Sims framework. But the reason why this was so great is because it still encompassed The Sims. Even though you couldn't, create your own worlds, you couldn't build your own lots, you could use the Sims build mode functionality in order to create and decorate your own castle. You could build different things. It had a create a sim mode where you could create, you know, princes and princesses, and the live mode still encompassed Sims needs and social interactions, and the whole thing felt like The Sims. It was just a separate Sims experience that had a medieval aesthetic. The Sims 4 Star Wars Journey to Batuu does not feel like The Sims, and I personally think they should have implemented it in the same way as they did with The Sims Medieval. I think that would have genuinely worked like really, really well, because EA does have a fetish for releasing lazily implemented Sims 4 packs. Yep, I said it. Cancel me, I said it. So this is not a Sims 4 pack in my opinion speculatively, as I said before. Therefore, there literally is no Sims gameplay. Therefore, I'm giving it a 0 out of 10 for gameplay. Of course, every single game in the world has bugs, and The Sims 4 is no exception, so we must look at performance. Journey to Batuu has a lot of action cancelling and extremely annoying pathing issues. There are gameplay sections where you're supposed to avoid getting detected or noticed by the opposite faction's guards, but the pathing for this was so bad it's basically a broken and unusable mechanic, and it doesn't work very well. Also, the special trait that's supposed to fill your Sims needs when traveling actually didn't work for me a lot of the time. It was very temperamental. The pack involves a lot of social interactions in order to complete missions, and as we know, socializing in The Sims 4 is absolute hell. Press ups, interactions being cancelled, and just, you know, Sims being annoying, stupid Sims. Normally this is slightly bearable, but when you're actually trying to complete the missions, it can get very unbearable. This pack is playable, but it does suffer from a lot of issues, making it very frustrating, and you'll often feel like, I don't know what I'm doing and I can't do what I want to do and I don't know why. Therefore, it is getting a 5 out of 10 for performance for being mediocre. In terms of cross-pack play, this is a very easy one, as this is not even a Sims 4 pack. It doesn't integrate with the base game, let alone any other pack, so it gets a 0 out of 10. So my overall score for The Sims 4 Star Wars Journey to Batuu is a solid 1 out of 10. It's allegedly, in my opinion, based on no evidence, just the result of a contract between EA and Disney. Maybe they were trying to market the Disney World Resort Batuu area to a brand new demographic. Of course, so this is just speculation and alleged because I actually have no idea. If you found this review useful, I have a playlist full of brutally honest reviews. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one.